stalls. The stallholders put up with Aladdin because his father had been a hard-working tailor and had gained their respect. He had died when Aladdin was only a baby. Since then, Aladdin's mother had to work night and day spinning cotton to earn enough money to feed them both. "What will become of you?" she said. "You will need to get yourself a trade and earn some money. Why don't you train to become a tailor? Then with your earnings, maybe we could eat a proper meal and not go to bed hungry." "Stop moaning, Mother," Aladdin would reply. "I'm happy with my life the way it is. I've no interest in being a boring tailor." "You need to settle down and find yourself a good wife," she told him. "Maybe I will make my fortune and marry the Sultan's daughter," Aladdin said with a laugh. One day a cunning magician arrived in the village. He was looking for a boy to do a special job for him. When he saw Aladdin playing in the market square, he knew he had found the boy he had been searching for. The magician walked up to Aladdin with his arms outstretched, calling, "Aladdin, my boy!" He grasped Aladdin by his shoulders and kissed him on both cheeks. Aladdin pushed him away. "Do I know you?" he asked. "It's me, your uncle. Returned from my travels. I recognized you instantly. You're the image of your father, my dear brother. You must take me to see my brother. I have so much news to tell him." "Well, you must have the wrong person," Aladdin said. "My father's dead." The magician dropped to the floor and started beating the ground with his fists. "No, no, this cannot be!" the magician wailed. "I've returned too late!" At that moment, Aladdin's mother appeared in the market to take Aladdin home for his meagre dinner. Aladdin introduced her to the magician, who explained that he was Aladdin's uncle. Aladdin's mother did not believe the old man was her husband's brother. He had never mentioned a brother in all the years they were together. But when he handed her 5 gold ducats to buy food fit for a banquet, she was so hungry she decided to listen to what he had to say and invited him to their home for dinner. Whilst she cooked, the magician wandered from room to room in the small house, wailing loudly, "My brother! My brother! Why?" Aladdin did his best to comfort him. The old man appeared so upset, Aladdin thought he truly must be his uncle. "My brother was lucky to have such a fine son and wonderful wife," the magician said at the dinner table, whilst they ate the food Aladdin's mother had prepared for them. "What trade are you in, Aladdin?" Aladdin nearly choked on his rice when the old man asked him this. My son hasn't chosen a trade yet," Aladdin's mother said quickly. The magician pretended to think deeply before replying. Aladdin was worried in case he was angry at him for wasting his time and not supporting his mother. "If you'd allow it, I'd be only too happy to teach Aladdin the trade of a merchant. Then he'll be able to make his fortune like me." "Would you really do that?" Aladdin's mother asked hopefully. "Of course, it's the least I can do for my brother's son," the magician said, pleased his cunning plan was working. The next morning, Aladdin waved goodbye to his mother and set off with the magician to make his fortune. Aladdin followed the magician high into the mountains. "Where are we going, Uncle?" Aladdin asked. "This is nothing but barren land." "Hold your tongue, boy," the magician said roughly, walking over to a large rock lying on the ground. The magician reached inside his robe and took out a jar. He sprinkled some strange powder from the jar over the rock and muttered some words in a language Aladdin did not understand. The large rock moved. "Come here, boy," the magician said gruffly. Aladdin was nervous. His uncle's attitude had changed since leaving the village. He edged closer. Where the rock had been, Aladdin saw a large sheet of marble with an iron ring in the centre. "Open it, boy," the magician ordered. "I can't, Uncle," Aladdin replied. "It's too heavy." "Pull the ring and call out your name," the magician shouted at him. Aladdin clutched the metal ring, shouted his name and pulled. To his surprise, the rock moved easily to reveal a dark cave. "You must go in," the magician said. "Why don't you?" Aladdin asked.
The cave is split into 4 rooms. In each of these you will see great riches. You must not touch anything you see in the first 3 rooms, or even allow your clothes to touch them, as you will be turned to black stone. Go straight to the 4th room. You can help yourself to the riches you find there.
You want me to fetch the riches for you? Aladdin asked bitterly.
No, you can keep all you find. Take them home to your mother. All I want is the oil lamp hanging from the ceiling. Take down the lamp and bring it to me.
Aladdin shuddered. It's a long way down. The magician sighed.
Here, take this ring. It will protect you.
He took a large ruby ring from his finger and handed it to Aladdin. It fitted Aladdin's finger perfectly. The magician lowered Aladdin into the cave. Aladdin walked carefully past the first 3 rooms, making sure not to let even his clothes touch anything, as he did not want to be turned into black stone. When he reached the 4th room, he gasped. He had never seen such riches. Gold and silver, rubies and pearls, opals and diamonds, bigger than he had ever dreamed. They were dazzling. He filled his pockets with as many of the jewels as he could carry and attached several bags of gold to his waist. He saw the oil lamp hanging from the ceiling. He climbed up and got it and fastened it to his waist with the bags of gold. Then he hurried back to his uncle at the entrance to the cave. "Pull me up, Uncle!" he called.
Have you got the lamp?
The magician asked. "Yes," Aladdin replied. "Pull me up and I will give it to you."
Pass me the lamp first,
the magician called down to Aladdin. "I can't, Uncle. It's stuck beneath my robes. You must help me out first." The magician grew angry and started to shout things at Aladdin in the same strange language as when he had moved the giant rock. Aladdin realized he had been tricked. "You're no uncle of mine!" he shouted up at the magician. But it was too late. The rock slid back over the mouth of the cave, locking Aladdin inside in the dark. Aladdin jumped as high as he could, but he could not reach the stone above. He knelt down on the floor and wept. "What am I to do?" Aladdin wrung his hands together in despair. As he did so, his fingers brushed over the ruby ring the magician had given him. Sparks shot from the ring, and there was a bright orange flash. To Aladdin's amazement, a genie appeared before him.
"I am the genie of the ring. Your wish is my command, O master," the genie said.
"Take me home!" Aladdin cried without hesitation.
"I hear and obey, O master,"
said the genie, nodding his head once. There was another bright orange flash and Aladdin was transported back to his own house. His mother came into the room to see what all the noise was about. She was shocked to see Aladdin back so soon. Aladdin told her the whole story of how they'd been tricked by the cunning magician. Then he showed her the gold and jewels he'd found in the cave and the lamp the magician had wanted so desperately. "If we clean this lamp up, we should get a good price for it at the market," Aladdin said, holding the lamp out to his mother. His mother mixed a little sand with water and started to polish the lamp. As soon as the cloth touched the metal, there was a flash of lightning and a puff of smoke. Another genie stood before them.
"I am the genie of the lamp. Your wish is my command, O master,"
the genie of the lamp said. Aladdin looked around the house and thought how poor it looked. He glanced at his mother and knew she deserved better than this. "I wish we lived in a grand palace with servants and riches beyond imagination," Aladdin said. The genie clapped his hands together and their home was instantly transformed into a grand palace with 100 servants to do their bidding. As quickly as he had appeared, the genie disappeared. "I'm so happy you've made your fortune, my son," his mother said. "Now maybe you will settle down and find yourself a wife." Aladdin laughed. "Yes, I'm going to marry the Sultan's daughter," he said. "The Sultan would never allow it," his mother replied. "He would never let his daughter marry the poor son of a tailor." "Look around you, Mother," Aladdin replied. "We're not poor any longer." His mother looked around the palace and knew Aladdin was right. This palace was even more magnificent than the Sultan's. How could he refuse? Aladdin's mother went to the Sultan's palace and requested an audience with him. When the Sultan saw her, he was intrigued to find out what this poor woman wanted.
"Woman, why do you come before me dressed in rags?" he asked.
"Great Sultan," she said, "I have come to ask your permission for your daughter and my son to be married." The Sultan laughed until his sides ached. Aladdin's mother waited patiently until he stopped laughing. Eventually he said,
"Do you believe your son is a worthy husband for my daughter?"
"Yes," Aladdin's mother replied, "I do." The Sultan looked deep into her eyes and knew she believed what she said.
"Go to your son," the Sultan said. "Tell him to bring me 40 dishes of pure gold filled with jewels, carried by 40 servant girls, all of whom should be attended by 40 servants of their own. If he can bring me such a dowry, I will grant him permission to marry my daughter."
Aladdin's mother hurried back to Aladdin's palace to tell him the news. "When he saw the clothes I was dressed in, he set an impossible dowry to be rid of me," she said. "We will never be able to find such a dowry." "Mother, you forget I have the magic lamp," Aladdin said. He rubbed the magic lamp. There was a flash of lightning and a puff of smoke.
"I am the genie of the lamp. Your wish is my command, O master," the genie said.
Aladdin told him of the Sultan's request. The genie clapped his hands together. Instantly, 40 servant girls appeared, attended by another 40 servants. On their heads they carried dishes of pure gold, filled with jewels more magnificent than the ones Aladdin had found in the cavern.
"Will that be all, O master?"
the genie asked. "No," replied Aladdin. "I wish my clothes and those of my mother were fit for royalty." The genie clapped his hands together, and Aladdin was wearing a splendid suit made from pure silk, trimmed in gold and studded with jewels. His mother was dressed like a queen. Aladdin and his mother led the procession of servant girls and their servants from their palace through the market square to the Sultan's palace. The Sultan was astounded to see them, because he believed, like Aladdin's mother, he had set an impossible task. When he looked at the handsome young man that stood before him and the dowry he had presented him with, he knew Aladdin was indeed worthy to be married to his daughter. Aladdin married the Sultan's daughter, and they lived happily together, until one day the cunning magician heard the news of the marriage. He set off immediately, and when he saw the building that stood where Aladdin's humble home had been, he knew it was the work of the magic lamp. The magician was very angry and plotted to get the lamp for himself. He disguised himself as a peddler, carrying brand new copper lamps. The magician waited until Aladdin had left his palace before knocking on the door.
"Exchange old lamps for new?" the magician said when the door was opened.
Aladdin's wife could not believe that this old man would be as foolish as to swap old lamps for shiny brand new ones. She remembered the old lamp Aladdin had locked away in the cupboard and rushed upstairs to fetch it. She was very amused when the peddler snatched the old lamp and thrust a new one into her hands. He was running down the street with the old lamp before she even had a chance to say thank you. The magician hid in a quiet alley and rubbed the lamp. There was a flash of lightning and a puff of smoke.
"I am the genie of the lamp. Your wish is my command, O master,"
the genie of the lamp said.
"Lift Aladdin's palace and all its contents and transfer it to my own country,"
the magician ordered. The genie clapped his hands together, and the palace and all its contents vanished. When Aladdin returned home, he was devastated to have lost his home and his beautiful wife. He suddenly remembered the ruby ring the magician had given him to protect him in the cave. He rubbed his fingers over the sparkling jewel. Sparks shot from the ring, and there was a bright orange flash.
I am the genie of the ring. Your wish is my command, O master,
the genie said. Bring back my palace and my beautiful wife from wherever they've been taken, Aladdin said.
Sorry, master. I do not have the power to undo the genie of the lamp's magic,
the genie of the ring said. Very well, said Aladdin. Since you're unable to do this, take me to my beloved wife, wherever she may be.
I hear and obey, O master.
The genie of the ring nodded his head once. There was a bright orange flash, and Aladdin was transported to his wife's side. She was locked in the dungeon and weeping bitterly. When she saw Aladdin, she threw her arms around him. She was so pleased he had found her. Aladdin kissed his wife, happy to find she was unharmed. "Where's the lamp?" Aladdin asked. "The magician keeps it hidden under his robes. He never lets it out of his sight," she replied. Aladdin promised his wife he would get her out of the dungeon. He asked her to shield her eyes and then ordered the genie of the ring to take him to the magician.
I hear and obey, O master,
said the genie of the ring. Aladdin was transported to the palace treasury, where the magician was happily counting Aladdin's gold. The magician was so busy with the riches that he didn't notice Aladdin appear. Aladdin blew out the candles on the wall and in his loudest voice roared, "I am the genie of the lamp, and I have been ordered to destroy this palace and all in it!" The magician was so frightened that he ran from the palace, never to be seen again. Aladdin relit the candles, retrieved the lamp, and returned the palace and all its contents back to his own land, where he and his wife had many children and lived happily ever after.
The Elves and the Shoemaker, read by Tamsin Gregg. There was once a shoemaker and his wife who became so poor they only had enough money left to buy leather to make one pair of shoes. The shoemaker cut the leather and laid it out on his workbench, ready to make in the morning. That night the shoemaker and his wife went upstairs, said their prayers, and went to sleep. When the shoemaker came downstairs the following morning, he was astonished to find the shoes had already been made. He examined them carefully and saw they had been handcrafted to an exceptionally high standard. Every little stitch was neat and precise, and every nail had been hammered in perfectly. The shoemaker showed his wife. "Why, they're a work of art," he said. His wife had to agree. "Who could have made such beautiful shoes?" she asked. A few hours later, a customer came into the shop. "I couldn't help noticing the beautiful shoes on your workbench," the man said. "I saw them through the window. They're exactly what I need." The shoemaker handed the man the shoes so he could have a closer look. "They're a masterpiece," the man said. "I must have them." The man took out his wallet, emptied the contents into the shoemaker's hand, and left the shop with the shoes. The shoemaker counted the money. The man had given him twice as much as he would have normally charged. It was enough money to buy leather to make 2 pairs of shoes. So the shoemaker bought the leather and cut it out. He laid the leather for the 2 pairs of shoes on his workbench, ready to make in the morning. That night the shoemaker and his wife went upstairs, said their prayers, and went to sleep. When the shoemaker came downstairs to work the following morning, he was amazed. On his workbench sat 2 pairs of beautifully handcrafted shoes, made to the same exceptionally high standard as the shoes the day before. The shoemaker showed his wife. "They're very fine shoes indeed," his wife gasped. The shoemaker put the shoes in the shop window. It was not long before a customer entered the shop. "I couldn't help noticing the beautiful shoes in your shop window," the lady said. "They're exactly what I wanted." The shoemaker took both pairs of shoes out of the shop window and handed them to the lady to have a closer look. "They're the perfect shoes," she said. "I will take both pairs." The lady took out her purse, gave the shoemaker a handful of notes, and left the shop with the shoes. The shoemaker counted the money. The lady had given him twice as much as he would have normally charged. It was enough money to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. So the shoemaker bought the leather and cut it out. He laid the leather for the 4 pairs of shoes on his workbench ready to make in the morning. That night, the shoemaker and his wife went up to bed as usual. In the morning, all 4 pairs of shoes had been made. The shoemaker did not even have time to put the shoes in the window when a man and his 4 sons entered the shop. "My neighbour showed me the excellent shoes he'd bought from your shop the other day. I would like new shoes of the same fine quality for my 4 sons," he said. The shoemaker showed him the 4 pairs of shoes he'd found on his workbench that morning. "Perfect," the man said. "I would take them." He paid the shoemaker enough money to make 8 pairs of shoes. As the man and his sons were leaving, the lady the shoemaker had sold the 2 pairs of shoes to the day before entered the shop. "I hope nothing is wrong with the shoes," the shoemaker said. "No, they are perfect," the lady replied. "I would like to order 8 more pairs of shoes for the girls in my dance company." She called out to the street, and 8 dancing girls entered the shop. The shoemaker measured their feet and used all the money the man with the 4 sons had given him to buy leather to make 8 pairs of dancing shoes. And so it continued. Every evening the shoemaker would cut out the leather and lay it on his workbench ready to make. Every morning he would come downstairs and the shoes would be made. Each day people would come into the shop from all over the world to order and buy shoes. Business was so good, the shoemaker and his wife soon became very wealthy. One evening, a few weeks before Christmas, the shoemaker and his wife were eating their supper. "I still can't help wondering who could be making the beautiful shoes each night," the shoemaker's wife said. "We should stay up tonight and watch." "What a good idea," the shoemaker replied. That very night they hid themselves in the corner of the workshop and waited to see who would arrive. On the stroke of midnight, 2 tiny elves, clothed only in rags, climbed in through the window. They put their toolbox on the workbench and opened it up. It contained an assortment of tiny needles, scissors, and hammers. The elves set to work making the shoes from the leather the shoemaker had laid on the workbench. Their little fingers stitched, hammered, and cut the leather with astonishing speed and accuracy. Several hours later, the work was complete. The shoes stood finished on the workbench. The elves packed away their tools, tidied away the threads, and disappeared back out the window into the night. The shoemaker's wife turned to her husband. "Tiny elves had barely a stitch of clothing on. They must be very cold," she said. "We should make them something to wear, to show our appreciation for all their hard work." "What a good idea," said the shoemaker. "I can make them trousers, shirts, and little shoes for their tiny feet." "And I can knit them some socks and jumpers," the shoemaker's wife said. The shoemaker bought some cloth and started to make a smart pair of trousers and a shirt for each of the elves. He used some of the scraps of leather that were left and made them tiny shoes. The shoemaker's wife knitted them some lovely warm socks and a jumper each. On Christmas Eve, instead of laying the cut-out leather on the workbench, the shoemaker put out the tiny clothes and shoes. The shoemaker and his wife hid themselves in the corner of the workshop to watch what the elves did when they saw their presents. At midnight, the elves came sneaking through the window. Their faces glowed with excitement when they saw the tiny clothes and shoes. They quickly dressed themselves and danced around the shop with glee. They skipped over the workbench and jumped over the chairs. Finally, they danced out of the window and disappeared into the night. The shoemaker and his wife never saw the elves again. Their business continued to prosper, and they lived happily ever after, knowing how happy they had made the elves with their wonderful gift. Thumbelina, read by Tamsin Gregg. Once upon a time there was a poor peasant woman who wished to have a child of her own. So one day she went to visit a sorceress. "I wish I could have a little child," the peasant woman said. The sorceress saw the peasant woman was kind and honest, and so decided to grant her this wish. "Take this bulb and plant it in a flower pot on your window sill. When the flower opens, you shall see what you shall see," the sorceress said, and handed her a very ordinary-looking brown bulb. "Thank you," said the peasant woman. She took the bulb home and planted it as instructed. The very next morning, a beautiful flower had grown. It looked exactly like a tulip, with all its petals tightly closed. The peasant woman thought the sorceress must have meant her to look after this flower as if it were a little child. So the peasant woman gently kissed the bright red and orange bud. But this was no ordinary bulb, for when she kissed the flower, it gave a loud, long sigh and opened up. Inside sat a tiny girl who was about the same size as the peasant woman's thumb. "You are the most beautiful child I've ever seen," the peasant woman said. "I will call you Thumbelina." The peasant woman was very happy, as her wish had come true. She finally had a child of her very own, and even though she was only as big as her thumb, she loved her very much. She made a bed for Thumbelina from a walnut shell and used pink rose petals for blankets. She placed the walnut shell on the windowsill, where Thumbelina would be able to see the stars shining brightly at night and enjoy the first rays of sunshine in the morning. During the day, whilst the peasant woman cooked and cleaned, Thumbelina played on the kitchen table. She would merrily dance and sing. The peasant woman would fill a bowl with water and float an assortment of pretty flowers in it. Thumbelina loved to sit and sail on the flower heads from one side of the bowl to the other. She also enjoyed playing catch with tiny pebbles that the peasant woman found for her in the garden. One day, one of the pebbles Thumbelina threw accidentally hit the window and smashed one of the panes of glass. Although the peasant woman was not cross and understood Thumbelina had not broken the window pane on purpose, she did not have enough money to mend it, so it remained broken. One night, whilst Thumbelina was asleep in the walnut-shell bed on the windowsill, a big toad hopped in through the broken window pane. She saw Thumbelina asleep under the pink rose-petal blankets.
"Croak, this tiny creature would make the perfect wife for my son,"
croaked the toad. She grabbed the walnut shell with Thumbelina in it and hopped back out through the broken window pane into the garden. She took the sleeping Thumbelina to the banks of the brook where she lived with her son. The banks of the brook were muddy and swampy.
Croak, look, I found a pretty little wife for you, my son,
croaked the toad.
Brrrr,
Was all her son said.
croak, shh, don't wake her, she's so small and light, she's likely to run away,
croaked the toad.
Brrrr,
Said the toad's son.
Croak, we'll take her out to the middle of the brook and place her on one of the large lily pads. She won't be able to run away from us then,
said the toad.
Brrrr,
said her son, in agreement. So together they took Thumbelina to a large green water-lily leaf in the middle of the brook. Thumbelina woke in the morning, cold and alone. When she saw where she was, she burst into tears. Water surrounded her. The brook was very deep, and Thumbelina could not see the bottom. She would be unable to reach the dry land, as she could not swim. Thumbelina cried and cried. Meanwhile, the toad and her son were decorating their home in the mud with bulrushes and bright yellow buttercups to make it pretty for Thumbelina. Later that day, the toad and her son swam out to the lily pad to fetch Thumbelina's bed. When Thumbelina saw them, she was very afraid.
Croak, don't be scared,
croaked the toad.
This is only my son. He's going to be your husband. You'll live with him in the mud. Brrrr,
said the toad's son. Thumbelina watched them swim away with her walnut shell bed. When they had gone, she burst into tears again, as she did not want to marry a toad and live in the mud. The fishes swimming around the lily pad had overheard what the toad had said. We can't let the toad force this sweet tiny girl to marry her son, the fishes said. They nibbled at the stalk of the lily pad with their teeth. The lily pad came loose and floated away down the brook, carrying Thumbelina far away from the toad and her son. On and on floated the lily pad, but the brook was getting faster and rockier, and Thumbelina was very scared. A beautiful white butterfly fluttered by and sat down on the lily pad next to Thumbelina. He let Thumbelina tie one end of the golden sash of her dress around him, and he gently flew, pulling Thumbelina and the lily pad behind him. The butterfly guided Thumbelina and the lily pad around the rocks. Suddenly, a big beetle came buzzing past. He saw Thumbelina and grabbed her by her delicate little shoulders and flew high up into a tree with her.
You're the most beautiful tiny thing I've ever seen, said the beetle. You must stay here with me forever.
Thumbelina burst into tears once more.
I don't want to live up here in this tree with a beetle, she wept. It would be worse than living in the mud with the toad.
The beetle was most upset by this rejection, and he picked her up by her slender waist and flew her to the ground under a hedgerow at the edge of the forest. All summer, Thumbelina lived alone in the forest. She wove herself a bed out of grass and hung it under a large burdock leaf. She drank honeydew from the flowers and ate the leaves of the herbs that grew around her. If it rained, the burdock leaf protected her. But as winter approached, the burdock leaf shriveled into a dry yellow stalk. When the first snow began to fall, Thumbelina did not know how she was going to survive. She wrapped herself in a withered oak leaf and shuddered with cold. She was very hungry. One day, Thumbelina found the nest of a field mouse in a hole beneath the hedgerow. Thumbelina knocked upon the door.
Can you spare me a little bit of food?
Thumbelina asked. "Oh, you poor thing," said the field mouse. "Come in, and I'll find you something to eat." The field mouse gave Thumbelina a hearty meal. They chattered and laughed together. Thumbelina danced and sang for the field mouse. The field mouse liked Thumbelina so much, she asked her to stay. "You can live with me all winter," the field mouse told Thumbelina. "Oh, you are so kind. How can I repay you?" Thumbelina asked. "You can sing and dance and tell me stories," the field mouse replied. Thumbelina was very happy to be living with the field mouse. She helped to clean and cook. In the evening they sat together warm and cosy, whilst Thumbelina told the most amazing stories the field mouse had ever heard. "My next-door neighbour, Mole, is coming to visit this evening," the field mouse said. "Mole's home is much finer than mine. He's very rich, but completely blind. You must tell him the pretty stories you know. If you're lucky, he'll make you his wife, and you can live with him deep beneath the ground in a large, luxurious burrow." But Thumbelina did not want to marry Mole, and did not want to live deep underground. She loved bright, warm sunshine. She was very worried when Mole came to visit wearing his black velvet suit. "You're looking very fine and handsome this evening," the field mouse said with a giggle. The mole stood proudly and sniffed the air. "You have a guest?" he asked. "Yes, this is Thumbelina. She's staying with me over the winter. She tells the most beautiful stories," said the field mouse. She bid the mole sit down and listen. Mole was enchanted by Thumbelina's stories, just as the field mouse knew he would be. "I've recently finished digging a tunnel to connect my burrow with your nest," he told the field mouse. "You can use it to visit me whenever you want. Let me show you." The mole led the way to the tunnel he had just dug. It was very dark, except for a beam of light that shone through the ceiling where the mole had dug a molehill. Thumbelina saw something lying on the ground under the beam of light and hurried over to look closer. The mole and the field mouse scurried up behind her. In the beam of light lay a swallow, its little feathered body lifeless and cold. Thumbelina felt very sorry for the swallow. Both the field mouse and the mole turned their backs on the bird and scurried off down the tunnel towards the mole's burrow. Thumbelina bent over the bird. She smoothed down the feathers on his head. "You must have been one of the birds that sang so sweetly to me in the summer," she whispered. "You brought me so much pleasure, and you'll be sadly missed." She gently kissed the swallow's closed eyes. "Farewell, dear bird," she whispered. She laid her head on the swallow's chest and hugged it tightly. Suddenly, Thumbelina gasped. She could feel something beating. "It must be the swallow's heart," she said excitedly. The swallow was not dead. In the autumn, all the swallows fly south to warmer countries, but if one gets left behind and is caught in the winter snow, it will pass out and fall down as if dead. Now the swallow was beginning to warm up. It was returning to life. Thumbelina rushed back to the field mouse's nest and fetched some straw to cover the swallow like a warm blanket. Then she hurried to join the field mouse and the mole in his burrow. "We've been discussing your wedding plans," the field mouse said. "Yes, I'm convinced you'll make me the perfect wife," the mole said. But Thumbelina did not want to marry the mole and live underground. She loved the sunshine and dancing amongst the flowers. Each evening the field mouse would go and visit the mole in his burrow to make the wedding preparations, and Thumbelina would sneak away to the tunnel to nurse the swallow. After a few days, the swallow was able to open his eyes and look at Thumbelina. "Thank you," the swallow said. "You are so very kind." The swallow explained how he had torn his wing in a thorn bush, so could not fly south with his friends. He had fallen to the earth with exhaustion and fell into the tunnel when the mole had dug the molehill. Soon spring came, and the sun's warmth penetrated the earth. The swallow had fully recovered by now, and with a long stick Thumbelina was able to make a hole in the ceiling where the molehill had been. The sun shone through the hole, lighting up the tunnel, and the swallow flew out. Thumbelina scrambled out after him. "Come with me," the swallow said. "No, I can't," Thumbelina replied. "The field mouse has been so good to me, I can't leave her now." Thumbelina watched as the swallow flew away through the clouds and into the sunshine. She wiped the tears from her eyes. She was sorry to see him go. They had become such great friends. She walked slowly back to the field mouse's nest with a heavy heart. The field mouse was sweeping the remaining dead winter leaves away from the door. "You must start to make your wedding dress," the field mouse said. "Mole will make you a very handsome husband." The field mouse hired 4 spiders to spin and weave the fine silk material which Thumbelina cut and sewed into a magnificent wedding dress. But whilst she sewed, she wept. As the wedding approached, Thumbelina tried to stay out in the summer sunshine for as long as she could. She knew once she was married to the mole she would have to live underground and would never see the sunlight again. As autumn approached, she saw birds flying south for winter and wondered if her friend the swallow was with them. "Why are you so sad?" a voice chirped in the tree behind her. She looked up and saw it was the swallow. He flew down to see her. Thumbelina threw her arms around him and hugged him tightly. She told the swallow how she had to accept the mole's proposal of marriage, and how, after the ceremony, she would have to live with him in his dark burrow underground. "Fly away with me, sweet Thumbelina," the swallow said. "You saved my life. It's the least I can do to repay you." "Yes, I will fly away with you," Thumbelina said. She was very sad to leave the kind field mouse and mole, but she knew she couldn't live underground forever. She climbed onto the swallow's back, and he soared high into the sky. They flew over the forest where she had spent her first summer, and over mountains and oceans until they reached the warm countries where the sun shone so brightly. The swallow landed near to a beautiful, calm lake surrounded by palm trees. Beneath the trees grew hundreds of large, white orchids. The swallow set Thumbelina down upon one of these flowers. To Thumbelina's surprise, sitting in the heart of the flower was a tiny man. On his head he wore a gold crown, and on his back were a pair of delicate, transparent wings. He was startled by the giant swallow, but he was delighted when he saw Thumbelina, for she was the same size as him and the most beautiful maiden he had ever seen. He fell in love with her instantly. "Who is this handsome king?" whispered Thumbelina to the swallow. The tiny king overheard her question and replied, "I am the king of the flower spirits." Thumbelina looked around and saw there was a flower spirit in each of the orchids surrounding her. The king took the crown from his head and placed it gently on Thumbelina's. All the flower spirits flew over to see Thumbelina. Each of them brought a gift with them. The best present of all was a pair of delicate, transparent wings. They fastened the wings to Thumbelina's shoulders, and she was able to fly freely from flower to flower. Thumbelina lived happily with the king of the flower spirits for many years. The swallow visited them regularly. He would sit in his nest above the orchids and sing his sweetest melody to them all. Thumbelina lived happily ever after, dancing in the warm sunshine amongst the beautiful flowers.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program.
This is Audible.
Harper Audio presents The Frog and Toad Audio Collection, written and read by Arnold Lobel.
Hello, I'm Arnold Lobel. I wrote the stories and drew the pictures for my book, Frog and Toad Are Friends, which we're going to read today. Here are 5 stories about a very special friendship, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. As we read, we'll see what happens when Frog and Toad spend a lot of time together, doing things that make them happy. Are you ready? Then let's begin. Spring. Frog ran up the path to Toad's house. He knocked on the front door. There was no answer. "Toad! Toad!" shouted Frog. "Wake up! It is spring!" "Blah," said a voice from inside the house. "Toad! Toad!" cried Frog. "The sun is shining! The snow is melting! Wake up!" "I am not here," said the voice. Frog walked into the house. It was dark. All the shutters were closed.